This is Royce Kennebrew again with your DEI moment. I wanted to come with this discussion today of understanding stereotypes and implicit bias because they are relevant to what we are experiencing and seeing right now. When we talk about stereotypes, understand not that there are just more than stereotypes about people of African ancestry or Black people. There are stereotypes about people of different ethnicities, different quote unquote races. There are stereotypes about gender, about how women behave, how men should behave. There are stereotypes that are in regards to social economic status about how poor people behave, how middle class people behave, how rich people behave, how we see them, how we understand all of these different groups. Stereotypes aren't just racial stereotypes. There are stereotypes about everything, and they impact implicit bias. And the reason why we want to discuss them is because it can impact you on your job. How people come in thinking about you, whether you be a woman, whether you be from the LGBTQIA community, whether you be African American, whether you be Latino, Hispanic, Latinx, whether you be upper class, whether you be poor or low wealth, is that these ideas come to us mainly through popular culture, what we see on the news, television, social media, and these things impact our thoughts, and those thoughts impact our behaviors. Royce, why is that important? That is important because when you are getting your evaluation, there may be some ideas in the evaluator's mind based on notions that don't have anything to do with you. Something that they absorb from a television show, something they absorb from the news, something that they absorb from social media. And the problem now is that there's so much misinformation and disinformation that is out there that goes into the mind of people that impacts their thoughts and then impacts their behavior. And that may be an issue for you inside the workplace in regards to promotions, evaluations, in regards to the assignments that you are given on your job. And it also may impact you outside of the workplace in regards to when you're being pulled over by police. The statistic is if you're African American, you're almost 3 times as likely to be killed or shot and killed in a police interaction because of your race. And possibly implicit bias and stereotypes have an impact on that, and the fact that you are 3 times more likely as a woman to die during the event of you having a baby. And so there are things that go into that. But this video that is playing behind me, I do want to show it to you and talk about some very powerful things that the people say.
A is for Auntie, the oldest there all. She rocks all us children to sleep in her shawl. D is for Daniel, who tends to the door. He took care of Massa way back for the war. F is for Felix, who won't do no work. He's lazy and shiftless and ready to shirk. Z is for Zonia, chunky and small. But here come the missus, so I guess 'tis them all.
Listen, Mammy, there ain't no way to wash clothes. What you all need is rhythm.
What do you all mean, rhythm?
I'll show you what I mean.
The mammy, the pickaninny, the coon, the sambo, the uncle. Well into the middle of the 20th century, these were some of the most popular depictions of Black Americans.
Rubbly-up-dub. She rubs and rubs the knuckles right on down to the nub, yeah.
By 1941, when this cartoon was made, images like these permeated American culture. These were the images that decorated our homes, that served and amused and made us laugh. Taken for granted, they worked their way into the mainstream of American life. Of ethnic caricatures in America, these have been the most enduring. Today, there's little doubt that these images shape the most gut-level feelings about race.
When you see hundreds of them in all parts of the country, persisting over a very long period of time, they have to have meaning. They obviously appeal to people. They appeal to the creator, but they appeal also to the consumers, those who read look at the cartoons or read the novels or buy the artifacts.
It's not just that it's in the figurines and in the, the coffee pots and so on. It is that we are seen that way, perceived that way, even in terms of public policy. And that our lives are lived under that shadow. And sometimes we then even become to believe it ourselves.
Blacks don't really look like that. So why is it so appealing to people to think they look like that, and to pretend they look like that, and to like to look at icons that look like that? You look at them often enough, and Black people begin to look like that, even though they don't. So that they've had a great impact in our society. They therefore tell us both about the inner desires of the people who create and consume them, and also they tell us about some of the forces that shape reality for large portions of our population.
Well now, children, tonight old Uncle Tom going to tell you the real true story about Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, this is the...
Contained in these cultural images is the history of our national conscience, a conscience striving to reconcile the paradox of racism in a nation founded on human equality, a conscience coping with this profound contradiction through caricature. What were the consequences of these caricatures? How did they mold and mirror the reality of racial tensions in America for more than 100 years?
So one of the things that the woman says that's so powerful is that these images can impact public policy. Public policy, that means laws. That means the way that we govern ourselves in our counties, in our cities, in our states, in our federal government. That's what that means in regards to public policy. And then also is that if people who have those negative stereotypes about them watch them long enough, they start to internalize them themselves. And the thing that the gentleman says that's so incredible is that if you watch them long enough, you start to think that African Americans look that way. And again, this is not just about African Americans. There are stereotypes about people, the Latino people, about Asian people, about people from the LGBTQIA community. There are stereotypes about women. Okay? And then remember again that if these things impact public policy, that means things like Project 2025. That means things like Agenda 47. That means things like the type of policy that different administrations have in regards to people of color and different groups of people. That people bring this into the workplace. This clip is from ethnic notions, which was done by Marlon Griggs some time ago. It's quite old now, but it's always very good to talk about it. So why am I saying this? Why am I talking about this? I want to talk about how stereotypes are the engine that fuel implicit bias. Implicit bias is usually created about what we see in the electronic media, novels, religion, social media, books, poems, songs, as you heard in the beginning of this video. All of those things go into us. And then what comes out are these behaviors that impact different people. And implicit means that people don't know that they have them. And so I want to come to you and talk to you about that today. What's the solution? What's the action step? Action step is that there is a test that you can take called an implicit association test. It's called an IAT. You can go to implicit.harvard.edu and take that test right now on your phone about people of color, about women, about Latino folks, about Asian folks, about people with disabilities, right? Have you ever noticed that people in a wheelchair, sometimes people start yelling when they talk to people in wheelchairs? That's an implicit bias. Just because they have a physical disability doesn't mean that they have a hearing disability. And you will see that sometimes. So take that implicit association test. And some of the things that you could do is you have to be thoughtful about what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're saying. You have to question how it is, where did you get that information? And why do these groups of people make you feel this way? Now, when we're talking about implicit bias, the majority of our behaviors come from our implicit mind, where these images end up in. There are two systems, system one, system two. One of them, we are in our conscious mind. We make the minority of our decisions when we are in our conscious mind. The majority of the decisions that we make because of what's in our implicit mind. And when you feed those images in there, that's why McDonald's has the commercials. That's why the fast food places have the commercials. That's why the car people have the commercials, driving the car with the good-looking person next to you and the winding road with the scenic views. It's to impact your mind. So when it's time for you to buy a car, those years and years and years and years of what you saw about that Range Rover, what you saw about that Mercedes-Benz, what you saw about that electric vehicle, they impact your buying decision. That's why they keep doing it. They don't make commercials. They know people don't buy a car. A person doesn't buy a car every day like they buy French fries. But those commercials go in there to impact you, right? And so what we have to do is understand that first of all, the majority of decisions that we make come out of that implicit mind. Also understand that when you are under stress, you are more likely to make a decision based on your implicit mind than your explicit mind. And that there are things that can be put into place. For instance, they wanted to get more women inside of a particular symphony. And so what they did is that they would have blind auditions. They would put up a curtain, and the people judging the audition would be on one side, and the person playing in the audition would be on the other side, and the person could not see them. So then they recognized after that period that they started to increase the number of women in symphony orchestras because there was a bias that men were better than women when playing in the symphony. And so a blind audition helped to increase the number of women. And there are things that can be done in regards to that, in regards to employment. Taking all of the identifying marks out of an application, and that will impact it as well. And so these are some things that we should think about. So the important thing to take away from today is, number one, stereotypes have been in existence in this country, in popular culture back in the 1800s when you had novels. And so there are certain types. For men, it's the angry Black person. It's the Tom, Uncle Tom. There's the coon. For women, the Sapphire, the Jezebel, also the angry Black woman as well. And so those image types permeate popular culture, go into people's minds, and they think that Black people are like that, to where they have physical feelings about them in regards to their being and when they come into interactions. And that can impact us in the marketplace, in the workplace, inside and outside the workplace. And so if I was to come to your agency, your organization, your company and talk about this, I would talk about the history. I would talk about how those images, not just of African Americans, but of Native Americans, of Asians, of LGBTQ, all of the different groups that have the protected groups, that have the observational months and periods. I would talk about those groups. I would talk about how what I explained today in regard to implicit bias, how those images construct implicit bias and how they go into a possible influence when you have interactions inside of the workplace. That can lead to an EEO complaint. That can lead to an HR complaint, right? And so understanding this can make for a better, more hospitable work culture. That's the point of this discussion, and understanding implicit bias. And so I've done implicit bias for several different agencies as well. I do it a little bit different because I add the history into it so people can understand it a lot better. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't do the part that you see and heard today. So this is Royce Kennebrew again with another DEI moment. We will see you next time.